Hi there, my name is Alex and I completed the Ceredigion County Council Coast and Countryside work placement. I worked closely with 5 members of the conservation team from the beginning of September 2021 until the end of March 2022. But before continuing explaining the work that I completed with them and how this has impacted my career decisions and sort of academic decisions continuing on from here, it's useful if I provide a bit of context about myself and the council more broadly. So why did I choose this placement? Well, I've been determined to study law since about 2016, and the reason that I'm determined to study law is because I'm motivated whenever I see and am impacted by authority. So be it a parking ticket or planning permissions or any of these sorts of things, I always viewed that as very much a legal issue. But since completing the public law module and continuing sort of reflection throughout my sort of academic career, I've learned that it's more or less it's more the government that has control and impact on these things. It's the government who, through delegated legislation, that can decide to give you parking tickets or not, and it is quite very often government officials who have the decision in planning permission. So because of that, I'm very much now leaning on, rather than debating policy, looking at implementing policy. And so because of that, that's why I chose this placement as a stepping stone for a career within the public sector. Although I should also note that because of COVID and having to work from home, I was able to shadow my dad, who actually works for Cornwall County Council as a program development manager. So it was a brilliant and lucky experience that I was able to do that throughout COVID. Now, the council more broadly, there are 42 councillors who are elected every 5 years. Now, of these councillors, the winning party will then decide a cabinet between 6 and 9 members. Then, after the councillors, or below the councillors, you then have 4,000 council staff members, and this council staff is responsible for Ceredigion's population of 73,000 people. Now, 4,000 may seem like a big, significant number and a large council. However, when you consider that Cardiff Council has 13,000 council staff, which is a figure that's triple the amount of Ceredigions, it puts it into perspective that maybe this isn't a significant amount of staff members. But then, regardless, these members have to work within these 11 major areas, which are as such. But what is highlighted here, this is a screenshot from a government website, that there is, due to sustained budget cuts and out-of-date finance system, there is huge financial pressures on these government systems. This can then be put into context by looking at the actual council structure. This is a Ceredigion specific structure. I worked within the Highways and Environmental Services, and there you can see that there is, all the names have been crossed out so as to keep anonymity, but I worked under the councillor who has been appointed for Highways and Environmental Services, and I was actually lucky enough to meet him before a big meeting that I actually showed off a piece of work that I completed. However, before proceeding with that piece of work, it's relevant to explain how important the difference between hard and soft skills are. So this was a big, I would have said, learning experience for me throughout my work placement. Very often in many other professional situations, there are skills like email writing where there is nuance, and it's arguably quite soft skills, this email writing. But in this structure that is sort of so layered and has so many different aspects to it, that email writing and making sure that you have correct professional tone is likely even a hard skill in this situation. So by comparing and contrasting different workplace attitudes, it was very interesting to see the different applications of these soft versus hard skills, although there are some clear hard skills which I've learned from this placement which have been extremely beneficial for my sort of academic career. So this is the team that I work with. Now, I'm not going to explain each of their roles because I only had chance to work with 2 of the members of the team. And when I say work with 2 of the members of the team, I was only able to gain 1 meeting with the planning ecologist. Now, In my environmental law module, I completed a big essay on how planning permission is impacted by environmental regulation, and I actually completed it in a practice negotiation question style. So I believe that I would have some applicable skills going in and working with the planning ecologist, but due to these budget cuts and everything, the planning ecologist was a very overworked position. And following my meeting with the planning ecologist, I spent time and composed a very correctly toned email for the planning ecologist and the head of the team so as to explain my thoughts and feelings about why I should work with her and what kind of work I could do. But anyway, unfortunately, that email was ignored. Or I say ignored, there was no reply for this email. This was quite difficult emotionally. And because of that, it was definitely a difficult period at the start of the planning, because I come in and I wanted to work with the planning team or planning ecologist, and then this was kind of not happening. But however, I was able to turn this into a constructive experience through a type of work called unsent letter writing. So if you ever have a workplace disagreement, it's encouraged that you write a letter but then never send it to the person. By applying this sort of methodology to my email that I did actually send, I was able to come to terms with this email and sort of acknowledge it as a piece of work that wasn't a waste of time, and it was actually constructive for me because I wrote this email that summarized the meeting, and it summarized, as I mentioned, my thoughts and feelings. And so because of this metaphor, I was able to view it as a constructive experience. And because I've been able to learn this in a learning environment, when I then go into the working environment where things are maybe even more personal than they are now, I can apply this unsent letter and begin to turn maybe negative experiences into more constructive experiences. But proceeding further with actually who I did work with, I worked with Ceredigion Local Nature Partnership Coordinator. Now, local nature partnerships are a system of they're a partnership. It's in the name, I suppose. But each geographical region, so Powys, Carmarthenshire, and the national parks, all have their own independent local nature partnership. Instead of going into detail about how these work and how they operate, it's beneficial for me to explain what my goals were in terms of this partnership. Now, the key performance indicators is to complete a terms of reference document that the members can sign on to and a nature recovery action plan. The terms of reference document I was able to read through and highlight and explain to the coordinator what each area could be applied to and how it could be applied to. But the key piece of work that I completed was a report on all of the nature recovery action plans, which was the second. So the nature recovery action plan is the second performance indicator. And again, I'm not going to explain how the nature recovery action plans can be used, but I completed research on all of the different geographical regions' nature recovery action plan report. And then I collated this into an Excel document, and then that's where my hard skills come in. Because I was able to learn and use this Excel spreadsheet process, I'd be able to definitely continue this in my future. And what happened then with this report is that I presented it to the councillor so I was able to talk to the councillor before the start of this meeting, and then during the actual meeting of about 20 people and 3 council members, I presented this report, not on its own. There was plenty of other discussion going on throughout the meeting, but it was all part of a scrutiny process where I, as the operational delivery officer, was then reporting to the councillor, who is the public interest democracy, and this whole process is the scrutiny process. And it's throughout this process that is how government functions. You have the government representatives who take these policies and then deliver on them, and then there is then the scrutiny process where government officials decide, well, they view the progress and they then comment on it and how it works. Now, it is because of this placement that I have solidified what I want to do in the future, and that is very much work as a civil servant. Now, the next steps for me going forward is I'd like to complete my master's in public administration or a master's in social policy. And so I'd like to sort of thank this placement for giving me the opportunity to solidify those goals. So thank you for watching.